Isabella of Castile's death was no ordinary demise. It was a haunting, drawn-out collapse that reflected the fragile nature of power itself. The queen who had once united Spain, expelled entire populations, and launched an empire across the seas, ended her reign not with triumph, but in excruciating pain. Her body, worn from years of ruling, pregnancies, and religious austerity, betrayed her at the peak of her influence. Imagine a sovereign, once powerful enough to bend nations, rulers, and even the Pope to her will, now helpless, trapped in a bed she could no longer rise from. Her body, swollen with infection, organs failing one by one, betrayed her even as her mind remained sharp and painfully awake. Isabella's death marked the end of an era, a dark, rotten chapter of history that even the strongest could not escape. Subscribe to Dark Rotten Era. Like, share, and comment below. Let's dive deeper into this tragic, rotting legacy. Isabella of Castile, crowned in 1474, was a force to be reckoned with. Her reign was one of political brilliance and military conquest, marking the dawn of Spain as a unified kingdom. She led her forces to victory in the conquest of Granada, pushing the last remnants of Muslim rule out of Spain. Her support of Christopher Columbus's journey to the New World was pivotal, forever changing the course of history. As the queen of both Castile and Aragon, she unified two kingdoms that would later dominate the globe. Isabella's determination was matched only by her faith, and she ruled with a sharp mind and an unwavering will. Yet, her reign was not without its darkness. Her religious fervor led to the expulsion of Jews and Muslims, and the infamous Spanish Inquisition began under her watch. She was both revered and feared. Despite her outward strength, Isabella's body paid a heavy price for her tireless rule. 8 pregnancies, religious fasting, and years of intense political maneuvering left her physically drained. Her health began to falter as she aged, a stark contrast to the fierce monarch who once led armies into battle. As her body wore down, Isabella began to experience the first signs of a debilitating illness. A low, persistent pain in her abdomen became a constant companion, one that she dismissed as the price of age and duty. But her body, once a vessel of power, was starting to betray her. Even when fever shadowed her face, Isabella pushed forward, managing court affairs and issuing decrees. Yet something was wrong. Her ladies-in-waiting noticed her frequent fatigue, the tremors in her hands, and the pallor of her skin. Isabella's body was beginning to crack under the strain. As Isabella's reign continued, the illness that would ultimately claim her life began to take root. It started subtly, a vague discomfort, a dull pain that spread through her abdomen. But this was no ordinary ailment. Modern historians believe that Isabella suffered from a deep pelvic infection, perhaps a chronic abscess or peritonitis. It was an insidious affliction, one that would grow stronger with each passing year, silently consuming her from the inside. Isabella tried to ignore the pain, attributing it to the pressures of her royal duties. But as the pain intensified, her physical state began to deteriorate. The fever grew more frequent, and she was often seen clutching her stomach in agony. Yet, despite her suffering, she maintained her commitment to duty, continuing to hold council meetings from her sickbed, and managing her empire with the same steely resolve that had defined her reign. By 1503, the warning signs could no longer be ignored. Isabella's health had worsened to the point where her body's decline became impossible to hide. She struggled to stand, leaning heavily on furniture for support, and required assistance to kneel. Her movements had slowed, each one seemingly more painful than the last. Though her attendants whispered in concern, Isabella dismissed the signs, attributing her discomfort to old age. But it was clear that something far more serious was at play. She had always prided herself on her ability to endure hardship, but now her body was failing her. Her stomach, once flat and firm, became swollen with inflammation. Her breathing became labored, and her energy seemed to drain away with every passing day. Still, Isabella refused to acknowledge the severity of her condition. She continued her royal duties, convinced that rest and faith would restore her strength. In early 1504, Isabella's health took a devastating turn. The once fierce queen, who had held Europe in her grasp, now found herself helpless in the face of her own body's collapse. Her abdomen became more swollen, her fever more intense, and her pain more unmanageable. Physicians prescribed the usual remedies, purgatives, bloodletting, and herbal treatments, but nothing seemed to help. Her condition only worsened. The infection, which had been slowly festering for years, had reached a critical point. It was no longer just a discomfort, it was an unbearable agony. The queen, who had borne the weight of an empire, now struggled to even sit up. The court, once bustling with activity, became a silent observer to Isabella's decline. Power, once so firmly in her hands, now seemed to slip through her fingers. The political factions within her court began to stir, sensing the inevitable shift in authority. As Isabella's condition worsened, her body became a battlefield. The infection spread relentlessly through her abdomen, swelling her organs and poisoning her blood. Her pulse became erratic and her breathing shallow. Despite the growing agony, Isabella clung to consciousness, determined to remain lucid enough to make decisions for her kingdom. The once powerful queen, who had ruled with unyielding strength, now found herself drifting in and out of awareness. At times, she would speak clearly, reaffirming her wishes for her daughter, Joanna, to succeed her. But at other moments, she seemed lost in delirium, calling for her long-dead children or recalling battles from her past. Her body, however, could no longer sustain her. The once indomitable spirit that had shaped Europe was now fading, and Isabella knew that her end was near. Even the most powerful monarchs are not immune to the ravages of time and disease. By late November 1504, Isabella's suffering had reached unimaginable depths. Her abdomen had swelled to an alarming size, her skin turned an unnatural shade of yellow, and her breath became a ragged struggle. The infection that had ravaged her body now flooded her bloodstream, poisoning her systems one by one. She could no longer speak without difficulty, her words often slurred or interrupted by pain. Her hands trembled, her body weak. The once mighty queen, who had led armies and ruled nations, was now a shadow of her former self. Yet, in her final moments, Isabella remained a monarch to the end. She issued her final decrees, reaffirmed her wishes for the succession, and made sure that her daughter, Joanna, would inherit the throne. Despite her weakening body, she held on to her duty, even as the pain threatened to overwhelm her. As Isabella lay dying, her husband Ferdinand stood by her side, torn between grief and political calculation. Though he loved her, Ferdinand also feared the impending collapse of their united kingdom. The Queen's deteriorating health had created a power vacuum, and Ferdinand knew that without Isabella's strong leadership, the kingdom could fracture. Political factions had already begun to shift, with nobles aligning themselves with different factions, some with Ferdinand, others with the future monarch, Joanna. Ferdinand's concern was not just for his wife's health, but for the future of Spain itself. The death of Isabella meant the loss of the unity she had fought so hard to create. As her body succumbed to the infection, Ferdinand began to quietly prepare for the new political landscape, unsure of what would come next. His love for Isabella was undeniable, but he knew the kingdom's survival depended on swift action. On November 26, 1504, Isabella of Castile breathed her last. After weeks of suffering, the queen who had once ruled Spain with unmatched authority and willpower finally succumbed to the infection that had ravaged her body. Her chest rose faintly, then fell for the last time. The room fell silent as her ladies-in-waiting wept softly, and Ferdinand, standing beside her, bowed his head in sorrow and calculation. The confessor whispered a final blessing, and the court outside held its breath, awaiting the inevitable. Isabella's death marked the end of an era. The woman who had united Spain through sheer force of will was gone, and with her, the stability of her empire began to unravel. The political maneuvering that had once been hidden behind her royal presence now came into the open. Spain had entered a new chapter, one marked by uncertainty and division. Isabella's death left a profound legacy that would echo through the corridors of history. Though she had been a controversial figure, her reign fundamentally reshaped Spain and the world. Her unification of Castile and Aragon laid the foundation for Spain's global dominance. She was a patron of exploration, funding Columbus's voyages that would lead to the discovery of the New World. But her reign was also marred by religious intolerance, the expulsion of Jews and Muslims, and the beginning of the Spanish Inquisition. Her death, though tragic, marked the end of an era. The power she had held so firmly now began to slip away, and Spain was left to grapple with the consequences of her decisions. Isabella's legacy is one of both greatness and cruelty, a queen who shaped the course of history, yet whose final days were a reminder of the frailty that lies beneath even the most powerful thrones. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the life and death of Isabella of Castile. From her rise as one of history's most powerful queens to her tragic, painful end, Isabella's story serves as a haunting reminder of the fragility of power. Though she reshaped the world in her time, her final days reveal the vulnerabilities that even the mightiest rulers must face. If you found this story fascinating, don't forget to subscribe to Dark Rotten Era for more gripping historical narratives. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your take on Isabella's legacy. Was she a visionary leader, or did her actions leave behind a darker shadow? Join the discussion and stay tuned for more captivating stories from the past.